howdy everyone out there in Twitch TV land. My name is Mokog and I am here with one of my good buddies, Function, and we are bringing you today the General's Tent. Function, how is it going?
It's going pretty good. I need to get a haircut though, because I'm looking all shaggy.
Oh, you want to talk about Shaggy? I've been looking in the mirror a couple times. I am rocking the mullet at this point. Like, all of this right here is way too much party in the back.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. I mean, you could practically braid this crap right now. And I've told my wife if she tries that it's going to end up me shaving my head entirely.
Yeah, like the hex not good for the personal hygiene as far as hair goes.
Well, you know, part of it was MMOs happened and the mullet comes back because it's just the lazy man's haircut.
No, it was, let me fix that. It was cool in the 80s, and then people realized that they had mullets.
Yes.
That about sums it up better.
I think when a haircut gets a saying, it's time to move on from the haircut.
Probably.
But that's okay, because what's not as powerful as a mullet are some of the cards that are in the game. How'd you like that transition?
Yeah, there you go.
That
Going
was
straight into actually talking about what we're here to talk about.
Yes, we're here to talk about OP cards. We're going to take a look at a couple cards of the week. I think we're also going to be taking a look at building our own mechanics. Get a little creative up in here. We have our content creator feature today because we have some really great creators out there. We got to share the love on that one. All sorts of good stuff, and maybe a couple updates to the holiday schedule too. What you think?
Yeah, it sounds just about right.
Now, I know you are vehement on this one because let's go ahead and explain overpowered cards for those who are not as familiar with the game and the term.
If you're not familiar with the term, I would be like, how? I guess you've never set foot in any MMO forum ever in your life. When people are talking about something being overpowered, they are talking about it being overpowered, meaning it has too much power. It is too strong of a card. There's something, or it's too strong of a class, or whatever else it is that they're complaining about. They're saying it is too strong, and generally they're saying it's unhealthy for the game. If they're not, okay, so actually, I guess that's the first thing you should say when you're defining it. If they're not saying it's unhealthy for the game, if they're saying like it's fine but it's overpowered, then they're not saying it's overpowered. They're just saying it's a strong card. So there's a difference between cards that are just strong and cards that are unhealthy for the game. And so that's the distinction I would like to make, is that what most of the people you might see on the forums saying, oh, this card is overpowered, it does things, it wins sometimes. Like, no, they're just talking about powerful cards. If the card is not unhealthy for the game, it's totally fine. And so far, having only played with the game for a dozen or so weeks, I don't think we can really say any card is dramatically overpowered. And actually, I'm kind of surprised. Everything feels relatively well balanced.
When it comes to that, I can tell that a few were on the verge, and I think if they had taken in the power of the whole set, which, let's remember, we don't have the whole set yet, then a couple might have been battling for that kind of status. I know you had really great arguments for some of the escalation cards being in that overpowered state.
Yeah, they were definitely like, escalation in general was definitely probably too strong. I would agree.
Well, and I think the escalation, and if you look at the edits that were done, and I guess we'll jump into that right quick. I'll pull up one of my favorite ones here right quick.
I mean, we were mainly looking at, Eternal Youth and Ragefire.
Yeah, Eternal Youth, and I was actually looking for the wonderful, wonderful Ragefire. So, Ragefire used to deal 2 damage, and then its escalation was doubling the 2. So you'd hit 2, 4, 8, 16. So you'd be dealing 16 damage by your 4th play. You'd end the game. But now it's adding 2, so you hit 2, 4, 6. The 3rd plays on all of the escalations is really what's been nerfed. And so what that kind of tells you that you can infer from the design state on that is that they thought the 3rd play of an escalation card that shuffles back into your deck started getting overpowered across the board.
Yeah, that, and then just as they, definitely, so the 3rd play of Ragefire definitely started getting too strong, and then, really, in Eternal Youth's case, it was, the 10th play of Eternal Youth or whatever it was that started getting you up in the like tens of thousands of life that you were
Mm-hmm.
able to achieve with what is it, Demented Demolisher, which also got changed a little
Yes.
bit. But
And you can make the case that Demented Demolisher in a limited environment was getting overpowered as well.
yeah,
But that's a
I think
limited environment.
yeah, in a very limited setting, it might have been oppressive. But I think right now the only cards I would say like are borderline oppressive cards are like some of the mono wild cards are kind of like there's there are a large number of spell shield troops that are also very powerful,
Mm-hmm.
and then also the fist card is clearly really strong and it's hard to interact with. But even those, I would say they're not so hard to interact with that they're overpowered. Maybe like the deck as a whole, if anything, it's got so many of those cards in it that
Mm-hmm.
it becomes really hard to interact with. But honestly, I mean I think people who are saying there are cards that are overpowered right now are they should really be saying these cards are strong. In some situations, they win the game, and uh, but that they're not actually unhealthy for the game. So I guess that's what I'm really getting at is every card or most cards have the potential to be very very strong, and
Mm-hmm.
and maybe that leads us into our next topic.
Something that we touched on quite a bit when we were first looking at the set, and it is the card Sorrow. For those who remember our first one, Sorrow used to be a one cost, one blood threshold, quick action that gave -1, -0 to all troops. Now it reads a little differently. Its cost is still the same with one blood threshold, but it's now a basic action and its troops get -1, -1 this turn. So they took it from being just a negative attack effect to it being something that affects the toughness of the troops as well, globally across both sides. And I think they took it from being a playable aggro stopper for some of the early game Ruby, as well as a way to deal with some of the spell shield cards.
All right, I'm hearing you there. With some of the spell shield cards, maybe, but like even then, since it's not permanent and like most of them have pretty big bodies, I think you're gonna have a hard argument there. I think it would still be fair if they did it as a quick action, maybe made it two cost or something, because it does feel like that card wants to really wants to be a quick action. It feels like a
Mm-hmm.
card that you want to be able to play either during combat or during your opponent's turn, and especially in like a limited format, so for draft or sealed. But in constructed, even if it was made into a quick action, I don't think it'd be too strong. They could up the cost to two and then make it a quick action. I'd still probably be happy with it. It does feel like a card that like you want to be playing in limited, and because it's a basic action, I start thinking like, all right, so do you play it before combat and attack with your whole team and hope that they block one fewer guy because you played it?
Mm-hmm.
You play it after combat and hope kill one of their guys. So if you're playing it after combat, you're probably having to attack with a troop that is gonna die anyways, or else they're just gonna let you swing through, or they're not gonna block kind of thing. Um, and in which case you're usually gonna be trading like two of your cards for one of theirs. So I mean I can't really say too much, but it's better than it used to be, I guess is what I would get at.
Well, and one of the things I was taking a quick look through the Ruby cards, and what I'm seeing in the Ruby is that a lot of the low costed Ruby aggro is sitting at 1 health. That's where it really chumps aggro. It
Yeah,
is a shin hair demolishing card, as well as a worker bot demolishing card. It
yeah,
will
it's
kill
good
all the
against
worker
worker bot for
bots.
sure.
It will kill, yeah, it kills the worker bots, kills the low level shin hair. Now it's one of those that it's going to be a sideboard card. In some metagame environments, it'll be main board, especially if Shin Hair take off because everyone loves murderous cute bunnies.
Well,
Uh,
the thing I would say with Shin here real quick
mm-hmm,
is like it doesn't. So for Shin here, I feel like for that deck to work, you need to enable your battle hoppers to actually do something.
mm-hmm,
And right now, like there's maybe three different ways, main ways I can think off the top of my head that do that. There's Buccaneer, there's Command Tower. So Sorrow now works against the Command Tower ones because it's not raising their defense, but Buccaneer, it's not going to help you at all against that. And then there's also Onslaught, I think is what it's called,
mm-hmm.
which gives all the guys like +3/+3 and trample, and
Yep.
that doesn't Sorrow doesn't help you at all against that, except if you're able to kill their Shinhare with it, like that they haven't been buffed kind of thing. So like
Well,
some of the time it'll be
mhm.
decent.
Well, and on the onslaught argument, onslaught being a basic action and sorrow being a basic action, you're going to have that turn once they lay out all their troops before they onslaught to destroy
Yeah.
them.
So I guess what I'm
Ideally,
getting at
though.
with the Shin here
Mm-hmm.
is like, so you're already playing Blood if you're playing Sorrow.
Mm-hmm.
In what cases is Sorrow better than Extinction? Okay, it's better if like you played on turn 2 or 3 and end up killing the same number of guys, so you're able to do it a little bit more efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
In what cases is it worse than Extinction? And I think there's so many more cases where it's just worse than Extinction that it just doesn't get there for you. That well, yeah, I guess you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, so Extinction's going to be much better for wiping the board on both sides, especially if you're playing a Blood Shin Hair deck. But you're going to want Sorrow when you're facing weenie decks, and that's really when you're facing
Yeah,
an aggro weenie deck. You're going to want Sorrow before you want Extinction, and that's why I think it
sure.
makes it sideboard. So where you
Yeah.
may main deck 4 Extinction to start off with, you might trade 1 Extinction or 2 Extinctions for 2 Sorrows against a weenie deck, or depending on whatever the metagame really defines.
All
Because,
right.
Blood has some greater than 2 health troops that are fantastic to run, and sometimes you want your troop to die to cycle it. So,
Yeah. All
and
right.
you
I'm
can
totally with you now.
call and
Yeah.
pull things from the grave. So we haven't even gotten into recursion. We haven't seen the majority of the great recursion cards yet. So you could Sorrow, kill your own troop, pull it from the grave, play it back in, and get a recursion effect going on with your Sorrow as well.
Yeah, okay, I'm with you. It's definitely good against the Ruby ones. So yeah, maybe a sideboard tech you might be bringing it in. Even if you already had Extinction, you might like want more copies, and you might go up to 6. So that way you have 4 Extinction and 2 Sorrow or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Yeah,
Yep.
sure, I'm with you there.
So they took it from being crap to sideboard constructed potential. Now, I was counting cards the other day, and we have, including shards, like 268 released cards so far. We know the PvP set, including tokens, is about 414 cards, if I remember correctly. And there's about 40 tokens for the game. So, all in all, we still have 100 cards we've not seen that are PvP playable cards that are non
Yeah.
token.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'll be interested to see like how many of them are just kind of vanilla cards that they're saving because we haven't
mhm.
seen a lot of that. So I'm kind of wondering if like they're even going to have that in the game, which has been making me think a lot
Mhm.
about draft and stuff. Like right now, just everything we've seen is like, um, I guess an interesting card. They're not just like basic, and even like the ones that don't have a whole lot of text are still kind of like well tuned or
Mhm.
whatnot. And so then for draft, like it's going to make card evaluations kind of interesting when so many of the cards are good. Like whereas if you'd
Yeah.
seen these cards in a different game, you might be taking most of them
Mhm.
higher than the majority of like some other games back.
Well, and it's one of the things that, from the emphasis on what Cryptozoic is released, they focused an awful lot on draft and a lot of their rarity decisions. And I think a lot of what they're getting ready for us in testing, having us testing game, is based on getting their baby into the game, their draft and matching system for that. That's what it feels like. I mean, because if you're
Yeah,
drafting all of the interesting cards that could, change in how the system works, well, then you don't need to put in as many of the vanilla basics or the vanilla with easy ability stuff in there because you're having multiple abilities tested on the cards. And
I do think it is good to have some what I would call bad cards in packs for draft.
mhm,
Like I think like I guess what I'm getting at is when the entire pack is all bomby, it doesn't make the picks maybe nearly as interesting as when there's at least a couple bad cards in there. But
mhm.
I feel like I'm maybe on a like there's some logical fallacy in actually what I just said almost that I mean we'll see when we get to play with it. I can't wait to draft the game. I've said that I think every single episode we've done so far. I cannot wait to draft the game.
Well, and I think where your feeling of the fallacy, because it's not fully there, but I can see where you're thinking it, is because there's two ways you can go. You can go, everything is amazing and I don't know what to pick. I love it.
Yeah, yeah,
Or everything is amazing and it doesn't matter what I pick because it's going to be amazing. Where's my
yeah. That's what I'm
challenge in
getting.
picking?
Yeah,
Uh,
that's exactly you hit the nail on the head.
and so, I mean, they're two different extremes, but let's be honest, for testing, you want everything to be amazing, so you break it, and then you tune in and add more cards to balance your draft environment.
Yeah,
So, because you want to make sure that you always front load everything and front load the hardest thing and the challenges that your development team can deal with first, so that they get done. You free up more resources to handle the lighter challenges along the way, and you sprinkle in a few quick wins to keep up morale.
Sure, and then they can always like, if a card doesn't make it, or if they feel like they have too many kind of amazing cards, they can always save one or two for later.
Exactly. Let's be honest. We haven't seen all of the legendary cards yet. There's still plenty of things that they can drop and change up as things go. If the last patch is any indication, they are willing to change up cards with backup versions. But now there is another card that I've really, really liked so far, and it is Corrupted Afterlife. It is one of the new cards that they brought in. It is a 6-cost, 2-blood threshold basic action. Revert and transform up to 3 target troops in a graveyard into zombies and put them to play under your control. And the reason I like this is because I built a specific deck to try to see if this was a viable card to play with. A Blood Shin Hair deck that was all about creating tokens, murdering your own tokens, and using your blood bearers to get life, and putting tokens into the graveyard. Corrupted Afterlife comes in because you can use them on your own tokens in the graveyard to put 3 2/2 zombie tokens in, or you can use it on your opponent's graveyard, pull their creatures out of the game, turn them into zombies, and then they're void and gone afterwards, so you limit and destroy any of their recursion.
Okay.
It's a fun card to play. It does swing the game a little bit, but it's not really intended for Shin Hair. And it's because the zombies are actually 3 for 2/2s, so they're designed to work with Inspire. All your best Inspire triggers are 2 and 3. So this is a card that you would be running if you were running a Lord Alexander zombie deck, or maybe a Life Gain zombie deck.
You know what? I hadn't even thought of that, like in the terms of Inspire. That's pretty cool, yeah.
So things like Corrupted Afterlife and the Sapphire card, the 7-cost Prophet of, I want to call it Lodgan, where you're putting in additional copies. It's a 7-cost card. Ideally, you have this guy picking up every Inspire that's hit the board so far. They're topper kinds of cards. And tokens go into the graveyard, which matters.
I still like the idea for Prophet of him putting in, because bring up the picture on it again.
Sure.
Yeah, because it makes more sense with the picture too, is what I was gonna say. So it's got kind of a guy that to me looks like either like a wild guy on the left, and then maybe like a blood guy on the right. He looks like he's got some like lightning kind of blackish blood thing going on. Even though in the front guy's got flames going out, so I mean that guy kind of looks like a Ruby guy almost, even himself. But I would really like this card more if they added if the echoes. I mean, maybe they changed the echoes and we just haven't seen that yet. But I would really like it if he put in a blood echo and a wild echo, and each of them did something that was totally different. They basically put out some cool triplet character.
Well, and one of the things that we should know is that there's actually an awful lot of flavor in this card. So one of the human alignments is they're aligned with Diamond, which is appears to be the far left, and they're aligned with Ruby as well for the 2 of the shards. It's a blue card, which gives it its blue alignment on the shards for flavor. And then it has the 2 base magics on the right and the left, the wild and the blood. So in this card, it's attempting to represent all of the colors simultaneously, which is one of the things that humans do. So, because in the lore so far, humans have split themselves into 3 cities, and each of those cities have essentially picked a shard type that they're good with, and they all experiment with magic, which gives them the blood side as well as the wild side. So,
all right,
this guy definitely has a lot of flavor into him. He's a little too high costed to be a super amazing at the moment, but he'll break later because he puts 3 copies of himself in play.
Sure. Yeah, I hadn't even. I don't follow the lore at all. You're the guy to go to on that.
Yes.
Except unless it involves Headless dude and the orc dude that I like. That's the only lore that that I invented myself and will follow.
Ah, the headless executioner. The headless
Yeah,
form of
full of
Zoltog.
lore. Yeah.
Poor
Um,
Zoltog.
no, he went back in time and cut his own head off. That's you gotta read the lore, dude.
Well, true. I mean, granted, I. Never mind. I posted the video. I know the lore,
Yeah.
damn it.
Yeah, no, I'm just messing with you. All right.
But
So
now you
what
had
were
a
we talking
couple
about?
cards too, though, that you've been playing
Yeah.
around with.
Real quick, I was gonna say. So you were talking about Corrupted Afterlife, which actually, and then you were talking about Inspire and Lord Alexander, which kind of brought me back to Plan C, which I've been playing a lot. And Plan C is pretty cool. It sucks that you kind of want to play other big guys in that deck in order to trigger off the Inspire effects you already have in it. So Corrupted Afterlife kind of almost takes the same spot. Is that for um, for 6 resources, you would get 3 bots from Plan C, and instead you're getting 3 zombies. Granted, they're a little bit weaker, but at least you're not losing all your resources. So that's kind of cool. I mean, and also it does take a little bit more work to make it work because you actually have to have stuff in the graveyard.
Yep.
But you know, if you're playing Blood, that shouldn't be too hard.
Oh no, you kill stuff all the time in Blood.
Yeah, for sure. So what were we talking about? We were talking about my two
Yep.
cards picked that I was digging. So when we start off with Howling Ambush, yeah, Howling Ambush is definitely pretty cool. I was like looking over deck building for the streamers tournament. My first game is tonight, and at least this was a card I considered. I don't think I have it in my final deck list, but it was a card I looked at, and I'm sure I'll probably end up playing at some point because it definitely seems like it has potential to be pretty powerful. So it says 1 cost, quick action in Diamond, and it says reveal a troop from your hand, and this does damage to target troop equal to whatever the revealed card's attack is. I think I had said that incorrectly, but that's roughly what it says. And so yeah, you're revealing a troop from your hand, and however much attack it has, you're dealing that much to another troop in play.
Yep.
For 1 cost, like having really conditional removal is still pretty good because, you know, if you have a bunch of high power troops in your hand, this is just going to kill whatever you target at most of the time. There's some cards that still dodge it, and all the spell shield stuff still dodges it, but it definitely has potential there. And I was, you know, it is too bad that Azawa, like, it doesn't have the troop deal damage to the other troop, because if you could reveal Azawa from your hand and have that work, that'd be pretty broken. And also, from the way I've at least looked at it, cards in hand and stuff, is Azawa doesn't actually gain power and defense until you put it into play. So while it's in your hand, it's still a 0/0. So it doesn't work in that case. But there's still plenty of other big white and maybe like wild cards that you could use with it and just like blow up their small stuff while you're ramping up to your big guy that you finally want to play. So I think it's kind of cool.
I like it. When I first looked at that card, what came to mind was I now have my Diamond Wild deck early removal card that I want.
Totally. And it wants to go in a deck that's playing a lot of troops, because if you have like one of those in your hand and then just a couple other spells and maybe a couple of resources and no troops, you're going to be kind of out of luck. But it's so long as your deck's playing a pretty high number of troops, this is going to be a good card for you because it's going to like very efficiently remove one of their blockers and you can get in for some damage.
Tell you what, take that one with the Verdant Wildeboar. So that one's a 2 for 4/4 speed. So you drop your diamond turn 1, you conditional removal to take out whatever they play. Turn 2, you drop into your wild boar, swing for 4, comes in. Next time it comes around, it's going to be an 8/8 in your hand.
The other day I was playing, somebody played wild boar turn 2, and then turn 3 drew the wild boar and played again. That game was over very quickly for me.
Yeah, that's a very painful. rough hit.
But all right, so that was number 1. It's definitely, I think it has potential. I'm not playing it quite yet. It's definitely going to be good and limited for sure.
Oh yeah.
And in constructed, it'll probably get played at some point. I'm not sure how many copies, but you know, it seems like a decent card. And my second card is actually also a diamond card, also 1 cost, and also quite good. It's also a hook action. So we're looking at Stone Skin here. Let me bring it up on my screen. It's interrupt target action targeting you or a troop you control. And Stone Skin, man, it's really good.
That's
like at first,
it's your counter spell.
Well, no, it doesn't counter. Well, currently in the game it counters counter magic, but I believe that's a bug because counter magic doesn't target any troops or target you. It just targets a card on the stack.
Well, do you control troops that are on the stack?
No. Well, I mean, not by my understanding.
So,
So
because if you counter magic to troop and it counts as you controlling it, then there's that little bit of wiggle room.
I would think it. At least my interpretation is a troop can only be targeted if it's actually in play. So that would that would just be what I was imagining. At least
Mm-hmm.
maybe, and I could be totally wrong. There are a couple cases so far with Hex where they've kind of turned things on its head and surprised me in
Mm-hmm.
interesting ways, I think. So, but what this is I mean it still counters a lot of other very powerful cards. The main one is
Mm-hmm.
Life Siphon. The fact that for one you can
Oh
very
yeah.
quickly counter your opponent's Life Siphon is pretty amazing. I mean this what it does is it does a lot of stuff in a deck
Mm-hmm.
where you're playing really aggressive and you don't want your troops to get removed. That you really need to like keep applying pressure. This is a great card for you. If you're playing it in your deck, usually, actually, a lot of the time, if you have it in your hand, you'll delay playing a card one turn just so that you can ensure it still lives if it's an important card for you. Um, but yeah, Stone Skin so far, like it. Well, I guess what I was gonna say is at first I kind of wrote it off. Um, I didn't really start playing with it until it had been out for maybe a week and a half,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was like, hey, we'll give it a shot, and then since then, I every time I play it, I add another copy to my deck, and eventually I'm playing either three or four of them. It's pretty good.
Well, and especially we have such a life siphon heavy metagame right now. I can see this doing well in the Hex Realms tournament as well as the next tournament of streamers as well. You see a blood deck, and all of a sudden the sucker comes in from the sideboard and goes, "Hi, your life siphons mean nothing to me now."
Yep, pretty much. I mean,
Uh,
sure, they could be playing like Blood
or Rage
Sapphire, but
Fires.
and use their Oh yeah, it works great on escalation stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It just like nope. It works really really well on escalation
Actually,
stuff.
yeah, because it's going to it stops 3 escalation cards in their
Yeah,
tracks. It stops the Chronic Madness, it stops Relentless Corruption, and it stops Ragefire when it targets your champion. And
and the big
so,
thing there is twofold. Sure, it's stopping the card, like it's stopping you from taking the rage
mhm,
fire damage, but it's also sending the card to their graveyard
yep.
and not escalating them. So the next time they play it, it's still going to be relatively weak if you get the early one. So yeah, it's pretty good.
So anything that stops escalation is really needs to be tested now. So Kitty's out there watching the stream. Go play with Stone Skin and make all escalation decks cry. Well, not
No,
all of
Stone
them, but
Skin's
some
good.
of them. The oh, let's see, what other really great cards does Stone Skin counter right now?
Well, actually, I think that's almost an interesting thing to say is what doesn't it counter? So there's like a couple, maybe like troop comes into play abilities
Mm-hmm.
where since they're abilities and not actions, it doesn't counter them. So like that Crazy Squirrel Titan where it kills a guy when it comes in, it won't
Mm-hmm.
stop that. It won't stop like Warlock Inquisitor shenanigans, a couple other things like that based off of the gems. But yeah, it's a pretty cool card. It doesn't stop like Sliver of the Immortal Spear if they're gonna hit you for the 5,000 damage or 10,000, however much it is.
Well, yeah,
It
and
won't
that's
stop
an
that.
artifact. That's not an action as well. So
Yeah,
its source is a wee bit different, and it's not going to
exactly.
stop any of your mass target stuff either. But they've messed around with a little bit of the mass target and single target removal too, because if you may have noticed, they increased the threshold count on murder. It now requires
Yeah.
2 threshold.
So they actually with the last I don't was that patch really more recent than the last time we talked? Yeah, I
Uh,
guess it must have been.
they partially released some of it a bit
Right.
early, and then they finished the patch out on the following Thursday.
Yeah, so there were a lot of cards changed. Murder,
Mm-hmm.
Threshold is now 2 blood. Inner
Yep.
Conflict now costs 3. Repel was moved down to 2 cost, but it only kills attackers and not blockers,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty much all upside. Because really,
Yeah.
the old way it worked, like using it to kill a blocker is always so awkward because your troop, unless it had Crush, it wasn't going to hit for damage anyways. So you're kind of
Mm-hmm.
losing value when you were using it to kill a blocker. But now that it costs 2 and it has that conditional effect of it can't kill troops that don't care about attacking, it's pretty good. Repel's nice, yeah.
And they also ended up doing a major hit on like Protectorate Defender too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, um, so I guess I might as well talk about it right now. This is a card I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking about earlier today. Is right now there's a blood gem that has when the troop comes into play, basically your opponent discards a card of their choice, more or less. Like if you're putting on defender, they choose 2 cards from their hand, and then you, the player playing the protectorate, chooses one of those cards for them to discard. And I'm trying to think like how good is that effect? So you're playing a 2-cost guy for kind of a slightly better version actually of Corpse Fly, because the player playing it has a little bit more control over what your opponent's going to discard. So I mean that gem's actually pretty interesting and the reason why I say it's interesting here is because now it's a major socket on a 2-cost guy, rather than on a 4-cost guy. But before he was really good, yeah, no doubt.
Well, and that's because they were doing the when he comes into play and the life gain equal to toughness.
Yeah.
So the prime diamond of endurance here, which you can't use that on him anymore because you wouldn't want to pay 2 just to get 1 health out of the guy. So that makes this guy a lot more aggressive than defensive. So he's no longer really belongs in a pillow deck, so to speak.
Yeah, no, he's actually he's changed roles complete 180 now. He's definitely the aggressive card rather than the defensive one.
And he does work. About... He works in a couple other decks. I mean that 2-cost. He's splashable, and he's going to be great in. He's really going to be looking good in drafts too because of his splashableness of a major gem that early.
Yeah. The major
he's just
gems
different,
are all pretty good.
and I lament it that he's different than he was because I liked him where he was at.
Yeah, he's still interesting, and I mean he shuffles in, which is kind of, it's like not really a high value effect, but you're getting something out of it. Like it's adding more threats into your deck rather than kind of burning out if your opponent's using a lot of extinction effects and stuff. And then the other one, so we were talking about like removal and stuff. I think the real card to talk about as far as removal that was either added or changed since we most recently saw it was Persecute. And Persecute is crazy good now. Like before, actually I think I even saw a post somewhere before of somebody saying that they thought it was more powerful previously, which I disagree with, but I think previously it was like target troop gains when this troop dies, destroy all other troops with the same name or something like that. So you actually it was actually kind of a deceiving card. Sorry, my cats are making noise in the background playing with bags. Of course, you spend like $30 on cat toys, and they play with like the lid of a like peanut butter can or something in a plastic bag. Like they won't play with the toys you actually buy them. A bunch of jerks. I'm gonna go get him because I think he's got himself stuck in the bag.
So while Function is taking care of his kitty cat problems, one of the big things in the change that was done to Persecute is that it went to the -3/-3, and that it still targets, but that it just drops it for the attack and defense for a turn as a quick action. Just changes an awful lot of how it is. It's now a real removal card. It takes care of a lot of 3-cost cards that were difficult for like Heat Wave to take care of. It now combos very well with Sorrow. It's can be used as a finisher, straight removal, and at the 2-cost, you're getting really good value out of it because you take care of almost every 2-drop defender card out there, so you can easily go 1-for-1 on this one, or take out something really good value that way.
So I just got back from saving the cat, but I overheard most of what you were saying, and yeah, it's just like very efficient, very flexible removal. Sure, it doesn't hit every target, but for getting something that's like so efficient and flexible, you can't really complain too much. It actually kills like, it should kill indestructible guys by reducing their defense down to 0. So like there's that weird white indestructible guy in there, it'll kill that actually.
And wild. So you double Persecute a Fist of Brigadon, and now he's gone.
I thought he was 7/7.
No, he's a 6/6 now. One of the other edits.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, he's still very strong. So now you can at least double Persecute him, sure. Which it seems like it's low value, but for such a big threat, you got to do something.
Yeah, if someone goes, you have your turn 3, you got 2 Persecutes in hand, and all of a sudden their turn 3 comes around and they go turn 3 Fist of Brigadon. You're like, drop my shard, Persecute. It's worth it at that point.
Alrighty, so I think those are like our favorite cards that were either added recently or just
Mm-hmm.
favorite cards recently, ones we've been building with and stuff. I think the next topic we were talking about is this time around was building our own mechanic and coming up with something that we would either enjoy playing with in Hex or something we thought was unique that maybe Hex could do that nobody else could.
I tell you, the I thought about this one, and when you suggested this a wee bit earlier, I'm like, man, they've got a lot of mechanics in there, barring really well. But you know what I'd like to see is I'd like to see it's actually a costing mechanic, and I like to call it Mirage. And the idea behind it is damage taken by the troop is taken by the player's champion instead. And so the idea being is that you have a troop that's in there that doesn't take damage on its own, but when it does take damage, either through attacking or blocking or damage removal, it's getting soaked up by the champion. So, you know, with that kind of costing, you can put a lot of cool, interesting, somewhat OP things on a single card. But when all of a sudden it doesn't take damage and has to be removed, it's a pseudo invulnerability that has a downside that, to be honest, has great interactivity.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting. Like, it's definitely a risk versus reward element to it, and then also like it does make the troop pretty hard to kill. But there's probably also some like interesting combo elements you might be able to interweave into it.
Mm-hmm. Uh, yeah, I mean, it's one of those where you'd have to be careful on your balancing and in your design. And what you want to bet they already got something like this in set two or set three. Heck, they may even have like a similar testing one we might test out here in the alpha for all we know. But
Yeah,
it's one where having a form of invulnerability that's not invulnerability is nice because right
yeah,
now, invulnerable creatures push the boundary of overpowered depending on their attack and toughness at this point.
yeah,
This one, on
yeah.
the
I
other
agree.
hand, that gives you a straight cost of you can swing with this 6/6 every turn, or I can block with my 2/7 and deal 2 damage back to you every time you swing with it.
Yeah, yeah. It
So,
kind of it makes it interesting. Like even if it wasn't a 2/7, if it was just like a 2/2,
yep.
I could attack it. I'm not gonna get damage through to you unless it has crush, and I'm gonna take 2 damage myself. So like,
Mm-hmm.
at what point do I want to stop doing that? It's kind of like in some points it's gonna discourage you from attacking with your guy.
Well, and the other part is that, and depending on the implementation of it, because you have two implementations, either the creature could take or the troop could take as much damage as it has toughness, or all damage passes through to the champion. So what you can end up having is, let's say in the case of the Tarrasque, you might want to block with that Tarrasque because whatever's coming through with Mirage is going to take that full 8 damage no matter its toughness.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it makes for interesting trade offs, a different style to the metagame, and I also like that it makes good cards better and bad cards worse. So you get a
Okay.
dichotomy there.
Yeah, and it would be interesting in draft because you could definitely design cards that had it on there and seemed like they were like really reasonably costed, but actually once you played with them were probably not that great and probably actually almost detrimental to you unless
Mm-hmm.
you had a really interesting way to utilize them. Which is one thing I really like about draft is when formats you can like utilize a card in a unique way and kind of build around cards for draft where it's not you're just not playing like the best troops, you're playing like this troop's a little bit worse but he works really well in my deck. Like those kind of things are what I really like in draft a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I was just popped in my head, sorry, is that I guess with Mirage,
Mm-hmm.
like working the way you said, is it has potential to result in tie games. And currently, at least in, I don't know about the most recent patch, but I had been testing like trying to force tie games, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd gotten it to happen a couple times, and the game actually determines a winner currently, which is kind of awkward. Like, I'm interested to see what they're gonna do as far as tie games go, because in paper it's definitely an issue, but with digital games, like it's not really a problem. They can just say, all right, well, there's no winner, we're going to play another game, and the clock
Yeah.
keeps going. You have a limited amount of time for each player, so what does it really matter if one player tied in a game, because you can just go into the next round. It'll be fine.
True, and there's multiple ways they can handle it. I mean, if they wanted to, if both players lost, a certain number of hit points simultaneously, you could just reset the health to like 3 or something. Pick an arbitrary number as well.
Yeah,
There's multiple ways you can handle it. That's not the best way to handle it.
yeah, that feels kind of icky.
Like not the best way, but a way.
Yeah, it is a way. Sure, sure.
And so it's one of those types of situations where what it might be better to do is actually go to the next one who can produce damage. Might be another way as a tiebreaker form. Both players were reduced to 0 health in the same damage round. Whoever can produce the next damage could win as well. Now, granted, that's only slightly less icky than my first suggestion.
All right, so why don't I talk about my mechanic? I haven't. This one's a little bit trickier, so I didn't completely flesh it out. But kind of what I was thinking of is basically you're playing these cards. It's actually a costing mechanic too. Is you're playing these cards which are generally undercosted. They're pretty powerful in that they their cost is lower than it should be, but when you include them in your deck, they put bad cards into your deck, and you're forced to have those, like, basically what I would say is like dead weight cards in the deck. So I think that's an interesting one, and I thought about it more and more, and I started thinking, well, if it's like literally a card that does, like, the dead weight itself would actually have to be interesting in some regard. So
you mean,
so maybe it's
like
not so
Pack
much.
Raptor?
Oh, Pack Raptor's fine. No.
It's like, no, okay, I'm not talking about Pack Raptor.
Maybe I said Pack Raptor was bad at some point, I think way back when. But no, it's actually totally fine, and it's crushed me plenty of times by now. But no, I guess what I'm saying is, like, okay, so potentially it could just put, like, literally dead weight in your hand. It could put like a 0 cost card that does literally nothing. But then you're just going to discard that as soon as you get a chance. So it seems like that might be a little bit more interesting if the card actually did something. And if it actually does something, if it helps you, then maybe you're not undercosting the card after all. Maybe you're just doing it the regular cost, and it puts this interesting card in your deck. And if it hurts you, then sure, you could be undercosting it. So maybe when you draw it, you discard a random card from your hand or something like that. And I was thinking about that, but that's a really big drawback. So I was thinking more on the upside level is maybe, and I actually started thinking about, like, flavor and how could it work. So I was thinking of like a revolution, like a political upheaval in the hex world. And so the mechanic is like all the politicians are dead weight, and so they give you these dead weight cards, and when you play the dead weight from your hand, it's a 1 cost quick action that says all cards cost 1 more until end of turn. So it kind of, like, I think it has a kind of interesting thing in there, is like the politicians are doing, like, all the politician-y stuff. They're slowing everything down a little bit.
Well, yeah, and you could actually work it really well in different forms of tokens. So let's say you had a form of what you're talking about, but instead it was dinglers.
Yeah.
So, what it put into.
There you go.
So you have a card that, let's call it like the Dingler Hut, or the Tribe of Dinglers.
Yeah.
The whole purpose of it is to, it fills the deck, it fills the hand, but, when you drop a Dingler into play, there are some reasons that, you may want a Dingler. Its cost can get inspired. You can find ways to attempt to make a Dingler work. So, they're not great, but you can use them for its discard fodder. You could use them, in fact, if you used it with that style with a blood deck, right now they have the Hideous Conversion, which allows you to discard troops and get mana. So
okay, yeah. All right, so now you actually got me interested. I mean, before I thought the idea was pretty interesting, but now that we're talking about dinglers, it's gone to a whole nother level. So it's definitely the Dingler Hut is what you would call it. and what does the Dingler Hut do? So when it comes into play, it puts like 5 or 6 dinglers into your deck, or like I don't know, just some number where it's like you really don't want those dinglers, but then when you actually play them, there's something with the hut that, like, the hut has to be good on its own. So you got to figure out, what does the Dingler Hut actually do? Maybe it's like maybe it's all dinglers get like +1/+1 or something like that. And at the beginning of each turn, turn a random troop into a dingler. So yeah, that's what it does. Is it potentially turns one of your opponent's troops into a dingler, but it might turn one of your own. And because it's a random thing, it's a hex. Because it's hard to do random in card games. You got to roll all kinds of dice and stuff.
Yep.
But since it's hex, you could very easily do that. All right, yeah, that's totally the dingler hut. It puts dinglers into your deck, but then it also randomly turns stuff into dinglers each turn.
And then you also have the dingler altar. Tap 4 dinglers and discard a troop you control from play. Automatically turn an opponent into a dingler.
Yeah, okay, so we got we're actually coming up with a legitimate dingler faction. We have just on the spot, there's Shin Hair, they're about swarms, there's orcs, they're about rage and aggressiveness. We literally we didn't plan this out. We literally just came up with a whole mechanic just for dinglers and how they're gonna work. I love that. That's awesome.
Well, the you gotta do something.
Yeah.
It's one of those. The dinglers are just great flavor cards. It's better than the sheep in WoW that from the mage spell polymorph, because it's a 0/1. The poor, hideous, almost cute creatures. Plenty of flavor. It looks like they're the most downtrodden thing in the entirety of the world. And then, you find a way to suddenly make what happens when you get polymorphed by the Sapphire Shard and turn it into something amazing. I'm okay with that. I have no problem with that.
Yeah. I think I like what we came up with there. That works. I liked the tax part of it, putting bad cards in your deck. Actually, the way I was thinking of it initially when I was starting to talk about it is if you're including the card in your deck, not when you play it, but say you're playing I don't know, what's a troop? You're playing Zoltog or whatever. So Zoltog, just by having him in your deck, he puts Savage Raiders into the deck list. He includes extra copies more than you normally could.
Yep.
But it's including the dead weight cards into your deck. So you might draw the dead weight, or you might draw this awesome card that you had. That's kind of cool. But yeah, Dingler's even more cool.
Which, Cryptosoak, you are hereby henceforth allowed to do this. Just make sure that you give us a call so that we can geek out about it.
Yeah. So we can talk about it on General Stent first.
Yes. So now, did you have any other interesting ideas come to your mind on mechanics?
Well, I mean, I've at this point I've probably come up with enough mechanics to design 3 or 4 sets. But I mean, I've been turning through stuff pretty rapidly. I designed a whole set around. Did you ever see? Shoot, what was the name of the movie? Now I'm blanking out. It was a Ray Harryhausen movie. You know what that is?
No.
So
to be honest,
Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. That's not the movie I'm talking about. But he did a lot of the animation with it, the skeleton in that. Shoot, what was the movie? It was something about an island and they go to see Captain Nemo. I'm totally blanking on the movie. It was in tip of my tongue just a second ago.
I have it.
Mysterious Island. That's the name of the movie. Mysterious Island. So I designed a whole set around Mysterious Island, which I haven't seen in ages. I mean, I saw it as a kid. My dad's a big movie buff and would show me all these old movies. And yeah, so Mysterious Island, it's they get lost on a balloon and a hot air balloon, and I think that's what it is. And they crash onto this island, and there's giant crabs and all kinds of weird creatures and stuff like that. And then I think they actually find Captain Nemo and go under the sea in his submersible or something like that. I think that's in the movie. Maybe I'm just making stuff up at this point. but yeah, it was a whole thing designed around giant crabs and sea creatures, and had Cyclops in it, and all kinds of cool stuff, and hot air balloon guys. It was a fun set that I came up with. I mean, I only maybe made 30 or 40 different cards for it, but I thought it was pretty cool.
So you're saying you designed a dungeon for PvE?
Yeah, actually that would be a great dungeon. That would be a much better dungeon than a set. It would be a really fun dungeon. Well, yeah.
Oh my goodness, I keep drawing Chlorophyllias. Something, you can't discount fun ideas like that. You know that function.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a whole bunch more fun ideas, and I want to talk about them, but I could go on forever.
I know. Why don't we just start up a petition, try to get Corey Jones on the channel, and just start pitching dungeon ideas at him, and see how many they've already thought of.
Yeah, I definitely have a really good dungeon idea. It's actually kind of funny how many of them are like loosely based on like old novels or books. But yeah, it's good stuff.
Now, I tell you, one of the other things we've got coming up, speaking of other wonderful people in the community, granted, not the president of technically the community, but one of the content creators has been really plugging along greatly, and that's actually been Errant Squire. Have you been following any of his stuff?
Well, I was actually the very first guest he ever had on his show.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. That
The
was like I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Maybe it was longer. Time's been going by really fast for me lately, but yeah, it was not too long ago, and we chatted about deck doctrine and all kinds of other fun stuff.
So, for those who are not familiar, he does something called, let's see, it is Building with the Squire. And that's where he'll deck doctor. He'll either take a deck that he's seen from the net, or he'll have a submitted deck from one of his fans out there. And they'll go through, they'll figure out different things that they can do to improve the deck. And, he's got great concepts down. He's a great guy. And he also, I believe, just placed in the one of the more recent tournaments, and I believe it was not the it was the second tournament was done, not oh goodness, what tournament is it's the
It was
Hex
the
Realms
Hex
tournament.
Realms. Yeah, Hex Realms.
And he just cleaned face in there this past weekend, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't follow. I haven't really been had a whole lot of time to follow all the tournaments and stuff lately. But yeah, I watched one or two of his games and it seemed like he was doing pretty well.
Then and on top of all that fun stuff, he's actually invited me on building with the Squire one of these Fridays that's coming up as well. So apparently, he's also a fan of the General's Tent.
Hell yeah,
Yay!
yeah. Well, actually, that's a good thing that you say it like that because I was about to say, oh, so you mean this is the last episode of the General's Tent that we're gonna do? You're gonna leave me now, Mokog.
Oh hell no! We have way too much fun doing this to
Yeah, this
ever
is
have
fun.
that come across. So it's
But
and
speaking,
we're blah, 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 stuff and things. You go right ahead.
oh no, I don't even know what I was gonna say. Well, I do, but I think what you were gonna say was probably more relevant.
Oh no, there's absolutely no relevance on my stuff right now.
Oh, well, I was gonna say, in that case, speaking of having fun, when's the next time we're gonna do an episode? Because we got holidays and stuff coming up, but I think we still have time to squeeze in one more before then.
We do. It looks like the next time we're going to be available is 12/17, so the Tuesday 2 weeks from now. It's the one right before Christmas. Uh, I think it'll be a really good one for. Well, actually, there's a. We'll be right there right before Christmas. That gives them about 2 more patches. We'll see if they get everything a lot more stable in the game. I think it's going to be an absolutely fantastic patch they could put in by then. Uh, we'll have plenty to
Hey,
talk about.
yeah, we might. I mean, it could very well be that we might have draft by then. I would cross my fingers. I don't think that's all that likely. They still got a little ways to go. They got to add in the rest of the cards, like you were saying. But you were talking about making things more stable. Is not too long ago, Chris Woods made a post saying, "Well, we're basically running the Hex server like for everybody. The entire server is running basically off of like a laptop
Well, I
or
think
like
he said it was a PC.
yeah,
So I think what they've done can maybe a midline or above midline PC, and the challenge to their engineers is to make it run smoothly with 20,000 people on a PC for a server.
yeah." So
And which is a challenge, by the way. I don't think everyone understands that that really is something significant.
you know what I want to actually see is a picture of this PC because at this point I think it's probably still got like a floppy drive, and once they upgrade that floppy drive to like a zip disk drive, then like they just got to go find actual zip disks first. I don't know where you can find those anymore, but once they actually upgrade it to a zip disk drive, then they'll be in shape, and then we can start thing.
Well, you realize that
Actually,
there
the
are
server's
people who
pretty
have
bad.
no
I
idea what a zip disk is. I barely remember a zip disk. I think I've held a zip disk in my hand maybe 3 times in my life, and that was in middle school.
Yeah, I
Um,
think like in high school, one of my teachers made me turn something in on a zip disk once.
and he asked them why there are CDs coming out in 2 months. Um,
Yeah,
but
the future is now.
the the power difference between an actual server and a machine built for vast processing of information versus the home machines or a personal computer is very different. The leaning that occurs on that is very, very different. And I will let those who know more about it explain it. For those who are really curious, you pop a question on the forums and someone will jump in and explain the architecture of it. But in those differences, being able to have the client lean enough to have a normal machine handle 20,000 connections, if not simultaneously, but possibly, or even the active connections we have now, hundreds to thousands of connections, uh, is really good. And it's a significant challenge for their engineers, which,
Yeah.
we've seen in the stability of the client.
Yeah, we've seen massive, massive improvements. I mean, just think of where we were like week 2 or 3 and where we are now. Like
Yep.
the fact that there's so many people, like you're looking at the game list right now.
Yep.
Before that wasn't going to be possible, but now, like, yeah, it's come a long way. And
So,
actually, I mean, because they're using such like a low end, I mean, well, a low end thing for running it, like they're using a computer basically.
mhm.
Since they're doing that, they're able to find like the stuff that's going to slow it down that much faster, which is great.
Yep. So, I mean, because anything that slows down the PC will slow down the server, but the server has so much capacity it can take those gluts. But the PC can't with so many connections going on. So they trim it
Yeah.
down, they make it efficient, and then we won't have the same kind of launch problems that we ended up having. I mean, because you think
No,
about it, let's be honest, 20,000 people attempted to download the client on the first day of alpha. Let's
at
be
least.
honest. Because the link got out there, it went viral. Someone went and made a torrent to be able to help stem how much stress was on those servers.
Well,
If they
we
tried
don't know
doing
if
it
they
on
were
the
actually
PC,
using the server for that though. If they used the PC for hosting that, I don't think they did. But whatever they were using, it wasn't sufficient. The real thing I would say is like, just look at MTGO. Because they never solved these problems, they're having the problems they are now.
oh goodness,
And epic
did you see
fail.
what Kibler recently did on MDGO
Yeah,
too?
I mean that was like 4 weeks ago, or it actually that was actually a while ago. That wasn't
Yeah,
very recent.
yeah, it
So
wasn't
it was
super
about a
recent.
month ago. But yeah, I mean that's nothing like him writing that is nothing new. Like that kind of stuff has been happening for a long time.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Well, and one of the things, and it's somewhat poignant to bring up with the challenges that Hex is having. Oh, and there was actually also, in addition to that, there was a recent Forbes article that was brought up that was attempting to take a look at all the TCGs that have been, or digital trading card games that have been released in 2013. And something that gets brought up in there is that they're bringing in Hearthstone as well as Hex and Soulforge and Scrolls as being actual full releases in 2013. And they can make a case for Hearthstone and Scrolls because both of those have open and active
yeah,
shops. But I know I'm not as familiar with Soulforge, but I know it was in beta, and Hex is currently in alpha. And
yeah.
alphas and
We
betas
still
are
got a ways.
works in progress. So not everyone's like Blizzard and releases and beta tests a product to the outside world at 95% to 99% done.
So on that note, maybe one last thing we can talk about real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, gotta bolt pretty soon. But
Oh
what I was
yeah.
gonna say is, speaking of alpha and beta and stuff, is I've been wondering. I don't even know if I might have mentioned this on our last show. Is does it feel like we're halfway through the beta? Like, it does to me. It feels like, or not halfway through the beta, halfway through the alpha, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how much longer do I think alpha is gonna go? Like, do I think it's gonna go? At this point, it's probably not gonna end before the new year. But I don't see it really going into February. It'll probably. I mean, I would. Well, maybe I'm being optimistic there, but
You're being
I hope it
really
wouldn't.
optimistic.
Well, I mean, what else do they need to add for alpha? They just need to make like the servers more stable. They need to find more of those bugs, but like they're doing that at a pretty rapid rate. Like
Mm-hmm.
most of the cards are already designed, and after last week, like how much they changed in just one patch, like it shows that they probably have a lot of stuff ready to go. They just need to put like the nice touches on it.
Well, and the reason I say February is a bit early on the options is we still have 100 cards that need to go in. Those do need at least a 2 to 3 week stress test to make sure that they're still good
Sure.
being picked up. Uh, they will need to do at least a quick test towards the end of alpha for accumulation of cards. So they'll need to do a
Yeah.
one-time test of where they clear everyone's stock, give everyone a ton of packs, and say open to make sure this works.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be testing that in beta. You don't want
That and the
everyone's quick
shop,
starter
too.
stuff. So
Yeah, I didn't even think about
so they need to
card
test their
accumulation
shop.
in the shop.
They need to test their tournament servers, their tournament architecture. So I think there's two phases of alpha, and I think the first phase is, open PvP, and then the second phase is going to be drafting and constructed tournaments. And I believe they're going to phase cards in the whole way through, because I think they're confident that they have a good grasp of what their meta games are going to be like, the changes they've made, because they've changed 20 cards out of 260 so far. That's a small percentage change for an early alpha game, and we don't know if they're just really switching cards in and out for the stuff that they thought, or if they're just using backups. So
well, yeah, I mean, they might have, a lot of these changes might have just been, they had 5 different versions of the cards, and they just wanted people to play with them and see like how people liked it and collect data, because you don't know what they might have, all kinds of data collection on their end, which would be pretty cool.
Yep. And hopefully they do, because that's, you got to test your data collection as well when this is going on, so that you can bring up and do really good analysis. So, and they're going to want the same time frame. So what I would do is I would take the time from the very beginning of alpha to the time that tournaments are released, and take that and just add that on, and that should be the expected time, because you're going to want to polish your tournament scenes. You're going to get in your final art assets, because you want it to be pretty when the shop is open.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So
we're gonna have like alpha, and basically it's still gonna be alpha, but it's gonna be kind of like a pre-beta phase, is what you're saying. So what's our next episode?
They honestly need. What do we think we want for our next episode? Yeah, on the 17th.
On the 17th, hopefully we'll be that much closer to finally being able to draft, because I can't wait to talk about that and actually get my hands on it.
Well, you know what? We're going to have a patch this Thursday, and then we're going to have probably a leak or two the next time we come around here on the 12/17. So
yeah,
I think and plus they sneak stuff in. I don't know if everyone realizes they sneak stuff in, and it's really, really fun when they do this, because every time I go into my card manager, I have to look at every card and see what they've done. I look for new arts, and I do other fun things. So the final thing before we run, and I'll let you go get prepared for your tournament game you've got coming up here.
Yeah, I'm doing a streaming tournament.
There's a few people who've noticed it, and I've raised it up on the forums. They've changed the number of cards in the shards set. So we see that it used to be 414, and that ideally would have been like the PvP set. What we see now is that it's 1,501 cards. That's an awful lot of cards. I don't know if that's really a
PvE stuff.
Yeah, ideally you think it'd be including PvE. They said that they've had, they had roughly 300 or so cards for the PvP set. This is some really early stuff when they were quoting this, and they expected about twice that for the PvE set. When you put that together, that's about 900 cards. Well, this is another 600 cards on top of that.
Well, there's two things. So tokens in PvP, they're not counting them as cards really. I mean, and referring them to tokens is kind of incorrect as well. You didn't lose me there, did you?
No, I got you.
Okay. So we got tokens, and I don't think those are being counted, but they're being counted in the number, kind of like you were saying for PvP stuff. But also that 1,600 number, that might just be like the way they're tracking them in their database, and that made it onto this patch or something.
Yep.
It might include a lot of the PvE cards that are kind of in production but aren't playable yet. Or sorry, not aren't playable. They're not meant to be playable. They're the ones that only the computer's going to use. So I mean,
raid cards.
And actually, I would be surprised if that number didn't get a lot higher for all the the dungeon stuff that they're playing, that the dungeon's playing against you, but maybe you won't have access to. I wouldn't be surprised if that number gets up to a lot higher. But I mean, designing
Well,
like 3,000
yeah.
cards, that's a lot of cards. So maybe not 1,500 still a lot of cards. So yeah.
Well, and I like to look at it. If anything, what we could have here is these numbers could be fairly dynamic in how they generate them on the art. If you look at a lot of the pictures that have been released up on the site, they are actually missing the this portion of the data there. So that's actually probably dynamically generated based on what the server recognizes as total cards. So that's
Yeah.
probably actually a bug that we're seeing right there.
Could
Because
be.
then it's what it's really doing is it's going, well, this is card 240 of a total scope of 1501, where what rationally it is, it's you need every card that you can collect to be counted towards there. So it's not pulling out tokens and it's not pulling out non-attainable PVE. That makes sense, but even still, what that tells us is that they are designing 1,501 different cards, including shards and tokens, for this game, and that's within what their shards set is. So PvE is getting launched in on the back end, guys. Don't forget MMOTCG.
But
And that's my
yeah.
spiel. But
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess speaking of spiels, I'm gonna probably be doing my streamers tournament in about I think another hour or so. But
and
in
you're
the
going to be
meantime,
streaming too, right?
Yeah. Yep, I will be streaming. I was streaming last week and that went pretty well, and I'll be streaming tonight, playing the game, getting that going on, and having some fun.
All right, give us some Twitch function plugs here.
All right, so there's my Twitch, but I'm not gonna probably be logging on for another hour, so I got some stuff I got to take care of before the stream. So
Gotcha. So in
I'll
about an
be
hour,
doing
we're
that
going to
when I
go.
do. Yeah.
We're going to go bomb your stream in about an hour and make crazy comments and tell you how to play your decks that you already know how to play.
Yeah. No, you'll probably be watching me fail more than I function, so we'll see about that.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining up with us today. We always have fun doing the General's 10, and it has always been fantastic playing with everyone. So until next time, I'm Mokog.
And I'm function.
And y'all have a very wonderful, fantastic evening.